Two, got video from the storyteller. 103,000 subs. So I'm praying this is an AI. It's a pretty unique premise. We got is Gohan and Uncle Tom, a black reading of Dragon Ball Z. I'm actually very intrigued with this video concept, and I'm just down to what I'm saying, lock in. As always, gonna prefer a little like. It's the main man Sly. So I don't tell time to provide you some content. Without further ado, we're literally sliding right in. Talk to me.
A lot of black people love Dragon Ball, and I think something fascinating is how we try and find parallels between our realities and this fictional world for the purposes of having fun and relating more to the characters we see on screen. I'm going to be open and honest and say the topic of this video is stupid. We cannot compare real-life complexities of race to this mystical, fictional world. Piccolo wearing a turban doesn't make him black. Saiyans being enslaved doesn't make them good parallels for the black experience. Case in point, video over. But I'm stupid. And I like letting my mind wander on silly ideas and seeing how far they can really go. I don't care for the surface level idea that just because the Saiyans were enslaved, that means they're a good allegory for
enslaved, called monkeys. Person they enslaved by is, very pale. They're brought to planets to make them better, but they don't get the profits. They just work. There's some parallels. Nothing too crazy.
The black experience, even as a joke. But one idea I love to think about and explore with the Saiyans is the idea of the Uncle Tom. Who in the Saiyans is the Uncle Tom? Who betrays their people and culture? Who is the one we look down on for not being like the other Saiyans?
Okay.
And my first...
If we were to entertain this concept, I think people like Trunks, Goten, and Gohan don't really count because they're experiencing different types of cultures and they're like biracial. And Goku is like far from the traditional Saiyan. And certain things about like his physiology and like his mentality, sure, Saiyan coded. But like he said, he's a Saiyan raised on Earth. So his son being the son of an Earthling and a Saiyan raised on Earth, it dilutes more of that Saiyan away. While like Trunks is the kid of the Sand Prince, someone who actually has at least some memories of being on the planet.
Answer was Gohan. You don't have to search far and wide for the conversation around Gohan and how he hates fighting.
It's on word.
Interestingly enough, there's even arguments to be made that Gohan doesn't even identify as a Saiyan to begin with, that it's ultimately something he's ashamed of. And to me, that's interesting. How far down this rabbit hole can we go? And if we are to do this full exercise,
he's like guilty to be
does
a Saiyan,
Gohan come off as the Uncle Tom of the Saiyans? Let's get stupid.
I see you, full of youth, pride, and blackness. The world is your oyster for you to voice your whackness. Rude attitude, mouth full of slackness. First place for best on. I see you, full of youth.
That was tough.
First, it's important we define what an Uncle Tom is. Despite popular belief, the origin of the Uncle Tom was Joshua Henson. He was a man who refused to betray enslaved people. He wouldn't reveal where the slaves were and ultimately died for it. He was an abolitionist who never gave up on his people. Then a woman by the name of Harriet Beecher Stowe read his story and used it as a basis for an abolitionist anti-slavery novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin. White people didn't like that. So they made unorganized stage shows of the Uncle Tom. He became a minstrel act. This is the anti-black origins of the Uncle Tom. It evolved into a throwaway term for someone who aligns themselves with anti-black power structures, policing black people on the behalf of the system, and distancing themselves from black struggle to gain proximity to power. The idea simply being that you can be black but politically on the side of the oppressor. This makes using Uncle Tom in the context of Dragon Ball and Saiyans really difficult. Because how do we take this concept and make it applicable to fictional space warriors? The answer is you can't. But again, we're indulging in being stupid.
Yeah, you can.
So first we have to define what it means to honor Saiyan tradition and culture, and what the opposite of that looks like.
Let me know.
When I say super, say super, super. I know what to do. I know, turn it up. Super. No matter what I could do to you. On his own throne, of course I can't keep up. On the microphone, off the way. Super.
Goku and Vegeta are the easiest frameworks to draw from, but they both have issues that make navigating this difficult. Goku is commonly referred to by his Earth name, and when initially approached about his Saiyan culture and identity, he rejects it. He rejects his brother. He rejects where he was born. From this lens, Goku is the textbook Uncle Tom.
Yeah.
But with time, he grows to embrace it.
Even beyond that, I think the people that serve Frieza are Uncle Toms because Saiyans aren't supposed to be doing that to begin with. That's not their culture. They are enslaved by Frieza. They're not partners of the Frieza Force. Frieza, when he pulled up in the movie, packed up 2 Saiyans. just because. So it's like, even though they're working with the Frieza Force, it is an alliance out of fear of being crushed. It's not an alliance of like pure partnership. So you could argue working with Frieza is like anti-Saiyan. Only reason we don't is because like the tradition is like, oh, they're technically enslaved. They'll die if they don't. And they have to stick together. So like, even if I disagree, oh boy is still with them. Oh boy is still with them. So to stay collective as a group, I should stay with the group. You know what I'm saying? So either way, there's two different lenses you can look at it.
He embodies the hopes and wishes of the warrior race by becoming a Super Saiyan, effectively a mythological messiah of the Saiyan race. If Frieza, a colonial tyrant based on a landlord according to Akira Toriyama, is in this instance our allegory for white supremacy, his fear of the Super Saiyan mirrors the fear of the Black Messiah. Something COINTELPRO, a counterintelligence program for black radicals, directly stated they were afraid of and trying to avoid. It's worth noting that Goku loves fighting, a key characteristic of Saiyan culture and tradition, and even goes on later in life to tell other Saiyans to call him Kakarot. In this sense, Goku is our modern-day archetypical Saiyan. But what about Vegeta? He's royalty. He's the Saiyan prince. He's the walking encyclopedia of Saiyan history. Almost every nugget we hear about the Saiyans in a modern context comes from the mouth of Vegeta. But Vegeta has problems too. Big problems. He kills one of the last remaining Saiyans. He doesn't care to revive Raditz with the Dragon Balls or even his own race. Vegeta transparently only cares about himself. And his pride in being a Saiyan is almost always directly tied to the fact that he's royalty. His whole initial conflict with Goku,
yeah, Jesus is a very selfish guy,
is purely
look at they short ass, bro. These niggas short.
that he's a low-class Saiyan who shouldn't be worthy, who shouldn't surpass him, because he's royalty. Vegeta is more enamored with eugenics and royal blood than he is concerned with preserving his tradition
hairline,
and
bro.
culture. You pair that up with Vegeta's subservience to Frieza's empire, our fictional allegory for the white supremacist power structure, and Vegeta suddenly becomes something more akin to an Uncle Ruckus, a self-loathing Saiyan who can't stand the thought of his people improving if it means it usurps his idea of royal entitlement. In that sense, is Vegeta even a good framework for understanding Saiyan culture and tradition? His experience as royalty seems to have completely isolated him from the average Saiyan experience. Despite claiming the Saiyans were only these ruthless barbarians, it seems the series ironically made an effort to
but Goku being a Super Saiyan proves that's not the case.
Prove him wrong at every time. Bardock, Goku's dad, is depicted saving his son from certain destruction. We see that some Saiyans weren't fighters and specialized in technology. His own brother was sent away for not subscribing to what I can only assume was his family's idea of what it means to be a Saiyan. It begs the question, how much of what Vegeta says about Saiyan culture is true, and how much of it was just the royal family's tradition?
Like a lens.
This is important when we talk about Gohan, because his framework for Saiyan culture and identity is Goku, who wasn't raised on planet Vegeta, and Vegeta, who seemingly had a very specific set of experiences tailored to him being a prince. So this means we have to find common factors in Saiyan culture and tradition, him being a prince. So this
it's a crazy scar, but a joint goes through his cut. Someone almost took his melon completely off.
Means we have to find common factors in Saiyan culture and tradition to understand what it means to be antithetical to it. And the most I can really discern is, Saiyans were naturally a combative warrior race, who sometimes conquered planets for themselves or their landlord, and for the most part, they loved.
Toriyama might be crazy for that. Why are the Saiyans so pale? Except for Broly, of course. Like, why does Gohan here look so pale? Like, when they transform, blonde hair, blue eyes.
Fighting. And for the sake of our allegory, the erasure of what Saiyan culture was prior to Frieza's colonial rule in some ways mirrors how colonialism violently erases the history and identity of those ruled under it. One has to ask, is preserving Saiyan culture, preserving what it looked like under Frieza's rule, or what it looked like in the modern day? Plain and simple, the tradition was conquest, the culture was a love of fighting. And with this, we can finally talk about Gohan.
Every block, every hood, every city, every ghetto.
Hold on.
Gohan.
That building say Ned. Ned. Q-U-S-N-K-L-L. Satan Tower. We know about that. Okay. Ned is such a crazy name. Or it could be Knee H, like Knee Headquarters.
Every block, every hood, every city, every ghetto.
Slip, Superman.
Needs a black superhero.
Gohan's exposure to
that
Saiyan
Goku
culture
stance.
is through his uncle, Vegeta, Nappa, and Goku. As a child, Raditz was ultimately the one who took his father away from him and robbed him of a relatively normal childhood. Nappa was the one who took his father, Vegeta, Nappa, and Goku. As a child,
Okay.
Raditz was ultimately the one who took his father away
He said
from him
uncle, and I thought he said
robbed him
Raditz
of
again.
a relatively normal childhood. Nappa was the one who then killed his mentor, who taught him how to protect himself. Vegeta is the one who beat him up several times and tried to kill everyone on Earth. And Goku, effectively his role model, rejected this culture in the presence of his son several
Persevered.
times. It should come as no surprise then that Gohan has a complicated relationship with his heritage, and specifically one of the core cultural characteristics,
Nah, this was
a
fire.
love of fighting.
This was fire, yeah. He was telling him, like, don't hold back. Give me everything you got.
And he certainly takes no interest in conquest. It's worth noting that when Gohan shows the most Saiyan-like characteristics,
It's in battle.
it's when he's angry. And this isn't even inaccurate given Goku's initial transformation.
Yeah.
Almost every Super Saiyan transformation prior to Gohan is derivative of anger and frustration. When Gohan says he doesn't want to kill Cell, but a few chapters earlier he's screaming, "Just die," to
Now you're going
Frieza.
to die.
When he says he doesn't like getting mad and loses it, it's implied to be because he loses his sense of self to violent Saiyan instinct. It would also explain why Gohan's character seems to do a complete 180.
I lose control of myself and get more powerful than I could possibly imagine. I guess that's what my dad was counting on.
When in these states of mind, he's arrogant, taunting, and relishing in the pain he's inflicting. To be a Saiyan is to be angry, and anger makes him violent. And because Gohan
I don't know though. I think that's his human side more than his Saiyan side, because most Saiyans are in control of their emotions for the most part. And again, like this burst of power, we've even been told it comes from the fact that he's a hybrid. Same thing is true for the hybrid, or technically no, none of them are hybrids. They're just all hybrids like Gohan. Like Goten is still coming from a Saiyan and an Earthling. Trunks is coming from a Saiyan and an Earthling. So they all are 50%.
doesn't identify with, or at the very least, likes to identify with that violence, he rejects it.
I think that's the crazy thing though. Humans are very violent creatures, but in Dragon Ball, they don't have enough time to talk about that. He didn't get to experience Red Ribbon Army and what Jiro did with the androids. That's human thoughts. That has nothing to do with Saiyans. That has nothing to do with, oh, there's threats, we want to protect stuff. No, it's selfish desires. Even with the leader of the Red Ribbon Army, only wanting Dragon Balls, I think, to like make himself taller or something. It's like he was chasing the Dragon Ball just because, and everyone whose life gets torn apart in the process, be damned. Like what? And the first thing you do, and that's a very human thing to do. First thing, he got a chance to point a finger at something, he's gonna point it to his Saiyan heritage. It's crazy.
And
Tien was like one of the first crazy villains. Yamcha was one of the first villains or antagonists that we saw. Human. Just opposing Goku just because, bro. He was a bandit, a thief.
that rejection, to me, speaks to a
That's so
rejection
crazy
of
to me.
Saiyan cultural norms and tradition. So that's it then. Gohan and Uncle Tong. Not exactly. My favorite part of Dragon Ball is the Saiyaman saga. And there's a few reasons for that. I just think the series tends to be at its most interesting when Goku isn't around. But it's also the arc where Gohan gets to be more of a character and less of a power-up machine. We get to see him navigate the world after losing his
who he
father
is.
and existing in peace. We see that Gohan is desperately trying to assimilate into Earth customs and tradition. But when he sees the ways in which his power can be used to help people,
He wants
his
to be a hero.
instinct is to quite literally use his Saiyan heritage as a
an
mask for
advantage.
his identity.
Yeah.
It's easy to forget that the origin of the Great Saiyaman is Gohan going Super Saiyan so people don't recognize him. The Great Saiyaman itself is Gohan's way of embracing his Saiyan culture. And the irony is, he fights and finds some joy in it, not maliciously, but to recontextualize what it means to be a Saiyan to him. The Great
Saiyan
Saiyaman is
man.
effectively Gohan
That's tough.
screaming, hey, I'm struggling to figure out who I am in this world. Gohan's struggle with his identity almost mirrors W.E.B. Du Bois's idea of double consciousness. It is a peculiar sensation, this double consciousness, this sense of always looking at oneself through the eyes of others, of measuring one's soul by the tape of a world that looks up in amused contempt and pity. One never feels its two-ness. An American, a Negro. Two souls, two thoughts, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideals in one dark body, whose dogged strength alone keeps it from being torn asunder.
I think this is important too because there's like two versions of who we are. It's like who we identify with, who we want to be, kind of, and then like what the world sees us as. And depending on how much those align, that tells us like who we think we are. Like if you want to be a chivalrous person, a kind person, and people see you as a kind person, you're a kind person. But if you want to be a mean, vile person, you enjoy that. You think you're like a sadistic person or something like that. But people think you're good, you're gonna feel like an imposter. It's where imposter syndrome comes from. And even in like simpler ways, like you want to be an intelligent academic guy, but around the people you're around, you feel stupid. You can just be around really intelligent people, but you're gonna have this imposter syndrome to where you instinctually think you're not smart, or the intelligence of your friends is just natural and you're lesser in some way. Not the fact that everyone has different levels of intelligence in different areas.
The duality of Gohan is his Saiyan heritage and humanity. And what Gohan presumably struggles to reconcile with is what exactly makes him him, and how
Right.
to exist within his
Yeah,
own
he never
world,
questions the fact that
being
he's
both.
human, which is interesting. to
Even
me.
though I think the trope of the colonized race being inherent savages is a bit
I think it's also more interesting because Goku doesn't question being human and claiming humanity because he's not Gohan. He hasn't really experienced the world. He's a country boy, but he has experienced like martial arts, and that's been his bridge to like humanity. Vegeta was not a martial arts guy. They fought for combat, they fought to hurt, they fought to conquer. Martial arts, you fight to discover and you fight to protect. That's where Goku gets his assimilation to humanity. Aside from, rest in peace, Grandpa Gohan. While like Gohan has his understanding of what humans are at a deeper level from living amongst them, yet he for some reason cannot see like the violence that comes from humans. I think that's why Goku doesn't have a personality crisis. Because he's seen what the Red Ribbons did. Saiyan, human, android, whatever you are, you can contain violence, you can contain the ability to protect. He saw that firsthand when Android 13, I think it was 13, from OG Dragon Ball, was like, risked itself for Goku, to save Goku. And the same way, that was one of the accelerants for Gohan. Android 16 risked himself to save Gohan, and then got packed, and then Gohan turned up. That's important, that's good parallels.
played out. Within this context, Gohan can't operate in his
Either
strength
Android
as a
13 or
Saiyan
like
because
3
he's
or 8.
hyper aware of how it's perceived by humanity. He can't fully operate as a human either because he's biologically just stronger than them. So he
Yeah.
has to consciously suppress facets of himself to coexist. Regardless of which he chooses to do, a facet of
It's
his
gonna feel
identity is
awkward. It's like
denied
being
or
biracial.
ignored. This is made equally interesting because the last thing his father left him was the ability to go Super Saiyan. In the context of the story at this point, it's essentially the only thing that directly tethers him to his history.
Yeah.
The last year he spent with his father, and the thing he essentially died for. This is why Gohan's struggle with his identity is surprisingly similar to the war between worlds of double consciousness. Again, if we're gonna do this Saiyans are black thing,
Fufu
then
and
let's
Egusi.
actually get into it. Franz Fanon in Black Skin, White Masks said that
Okay.
colonized people sometimes internalize the oppressor's gaze. They learn to wear a white mask to be accepted. The Great Saiyaman mask works the same way at first. Gohan builds an Earth-friendly persona so people won't fear the real him. For Gohan, this temptation is the same, to keep his power
Right.
polite enough that no one trembles, instead of
And that's
using
why
it
he's-
honestly for what he believes is right.
And that's why he's doing all that posing. What he pulled from the Ginyu Force.
Gohan, at least for a time, strips his power and by extension himself
Ah.
of any radical possibility. This mirrors something Bell Hooks wrote in Yearning, that making blackness legible for white institutions strips it of
Earthquake.
any radical possibility. And that's exactly what Gohan risks when he hides his Saiyan reality behind a goofy, acceptable facade.
Kind of loses yourself.
This is the nuance that exists within Gohan's mask as the Great Saiyaman, when viewed from a black radical lens. This isn't to say that stopping bank robberies is anything
Looking like
inherently
Toriyama.
radical, probably far from it, but more to say that in a general sense, Gohan could do more good with his power by embracing it than pretending
Yeah.
it doesn't exist. Which is why the
Hey.
moments leading up to the World Tournament are
was tough.
significant. The moment at the World Tournament where Gohan takes his disguise off and embraces his identity to the crowd is a great moment that I wish they kind of gave a bit more emotional weight. His conversation with Videl too. It's him being forced to come to terms with who he is, being honest to the people closest to him. If Goku is the one that says, I'm a Saiyan raised on Earth, Gohan is the one that says, I'm a Saiyan man raised on Earth. I don't like fighting out
Right.
of rage. I like fighting to protect people. I don't like throwing out demeaning insults to my opponents.
True. I like that because he's not like Vegeta. But I don't think those things make you Saiyan. But I can understand that because that's all he sees from Saiyans. He has like this mindset that he's so different. And that's where the biracial joint comes in. It's like you see certain black people doing certain things. So say you're black and then white, you're mixed, and you're obviously going to like want to dissociate with those things, and you disassociating with them makes you feel like you're not black. Some people will say it outright, like, "Oh, you don't know about this, bro? You're not black for real." But it's like, in all actuality, that thing that's not what makes you black. Being aggressive is not what makes you a Saiyan. Being vulgar does not make you a Saiyan. And your belief in that is what's pushing you in this weird space of not understanding who you are. When you can accept both the pros and cons of each side is when you can figure out who you are. But because he has to constantly keep himself in like this bottle, this perfect zone, because I don't want to harm people, I don't want to mess up, that's where you get the Saiyan man and not just the Saiyan who's human. You know?
I like doing stupid poses and saying silly catchphrases because I think it's cool.
2 hours
The Great
practice
Saiyaman,
is
and by
crazy.
extension, Gohan without his mask in this outfit, is the closest we get to Gohan fully embracing every part of who he is, to defining what it means to be a Saiyan on Earth in his eyes.
Also, something from Arrow I picked up too is like, it's foolish to think like a cloth or like a mask can like separate two parts of who you are. Both of them are you. It's like when they do the last so true, who are you? And Batman's like, I'm Batman. Whether you believe he's saying that because Bruce is the mask or not, those are both the same person. They're two different identities, but they're the same person. And you can't separate that. No mask allows you to perfectly separate that.
And something I love about it is that he ends up carving a greater legacy with his brief stint than Goku or Vegeta ever did. He inspires Trunks and Goten,
Heroes,
the next
yeah.
generation of hybrid Saiyans, to
Clean
follow in his
God.
footsteps. He goes on to write a book about ki control that revolutionizes martial arts and overall leaving the world stronger than he left it as a result.
That's tough.
Vegeta speaks a lot to what it means to be a Saiyan, to uphold the legacy of the Saiyan race in strength, but does almost nothing to help with this. It's really ironic that Goku was fixated on finding a successor, and all he could seemingly do was
Kinda
cling
like
to his
giving
old
up.
traditions and dragging his kids to tournaments against their will. Both
Yeah.
Goku and Vegeta's biggest flaws in preserving the legacy and strength of the Saiyan race was that their methods were far too traditional for the generation they were trying to reach. Gohan, on the other hand, reached people not only in how he fought, but how he chose not to fight, how he chose to guide the next generation, to be stronger and better than the last. So to answer the question, is Gohan an Uncle Tom?
Nah, he'd go.
No. Gohan is the most influential Saiyan to have ever lived. And somehow, in his confusion around his identity and embracing every part of who he was, he managed to redefine Saiyan culture and tradition, while not entirely betraying his roots, through his own perseverance,
Yeah,
influence on the wider
Come
world,
on, man.
and being true to himself.
He'd go for
I know we've
it.
been talking a lot about this fictional world with a fictional race and fictional cultural customs, but I do think there's a lesson to be learned here. Black radical tradition is important, and losing sight of that is how you get diluted Uncle Tom archetypes, seeking proximity to power structures by distancing yourself from your culture. But it's equally as important to understand who you are and what your strengths are. You can't blindly shackle
Yeah.
yourself to tradition without questioning what did
And besides that, you can't blindly shackle yourself to an identity. You need to figure out who you are and how that identity affects who you are, not so much of like how you have to conform to that identity to be who you are.
or didn't work. You can't divorce your racial identity from the modern context it exists in. If there's one
Right.
parallel in this video I think is genuinely interesting, is that understanding your culture in a post-colonial world is difficult. It's messy, it's confusing, and there's always someone that thinks you're doing it wrong. But if you're vigilant in making sense of that, you may not only help carry on that tradition, but help others make sense of it along the way.
Comp video, man. Shout out. We subbing to hitting that bell. Shout out to Storyteller, man. Appreciate y'all for watching. As always, stay happy, healthy, hydrated. Yo, time to catch me next. Peace.